So I think I'm one of the few people out there who really enjoyed Westworld all the way through its entire run, but it was definitely one of those things where you had to be sort of like a super fan of the series to really enjoy it beyond that first season and maybe the first two seasons, because it got much slower and it changed a lot in season three, and then season four it got, in my opinion, even slower and continued to sort of change. And while the showrunners have apparently had a 5-year plan for it, Westworld was canceled the other day by HBO. And this is sort of like this shock move that it's just been all over every single news outlet over like the last, I don't know, couple days. I know I'm a little late to the party in reporting on this, but that's because I've been busy with all sorts of other stuff and I've just been reading up on this. And it sort of got my mind spinning about, why did it get canceled? Was it a good thing it was canceled? Was it a bad thing that it's canceled? Just going to put some thoughts out there and love to hear your feedback. So, as always, to have a great conversation, put your comments down below. We're going to talk through this. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfill. If you haven't ever been to this channel, welcome aboard. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We'll talk at the end about ways you can support. But in the meantime, let's just kind of go through this. There's a Hollywood Reporter article. I've not actually read it yet, but they talk about how it says the title says why HBO canceled Westworld. It said ratings for The Price of Drama shrank from 12 million to 4 million. But do they mean ratings or do they mean viewership? Because if it went from 12 million viewers down to 4 million, that is a big reduction. And I know some people immediately out of the gate are going to point to the fact that J.J. Abrams was part of this production. With Bad Robot, and they're going to say, well, that's the whole reason it got canceled, and the reason it was a shitty show is because J.J. Abrams was involved. I am so sick of hearing that because I don't know why it is that people want to shit all over J.J. Abrams because his production company has produced some of the best award-winning television to come out in the last 20 years. Lost, Alias, the first, I mean, look at how many, and it may talk about it in this article. The first, I think, first season or the first two seasons of Westworld, it was something like, I think it was 50 plus Emmy nominations. I believe Thandi got an actual Best Actress award for like an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress, I think. We're going to be going through that, see what it says here. It says the move to cancel after the four-season run was met with surprise, though the writing for the cancellation had been on the wall. Season 4 wrapped its run 2.5 months ago, and I have not finished watching it yet, as an FYI. And they say HBO took its time with the renewal decision as it allowed the season to find a viewership on HBO Max. The move marked the first time that Westworld had not been renewed while it was on the air. Now, of course, there's always the chance that maybe it gets picked up for a fifth and final season somewhere else. Netflix has been known to save shows like that. It could happen. I don't know. I don't know that they're even trying to shop it around. I don't know anything yet. It says since its start, Westworld would consider a major swing for HBO. The production value was preposterous, J.J. Abrams told THR days before the show premiered in October 2016. But it's HBO, that's what they do. There was no way that this idea that Jonah and Lisa were from the beginning doing as a AAA experience would compromise. The expense is one thing, but the results are entirely on screen. Extraordinary cast, writers and directors making a cinematic experience. Season 1 cost 100 million. High by 2016 standards, but not high by today's standards, especially when you've got shows out there like Rings of Power, which are touting a $450 million production budget, or even House of the Dragon is reported to cost 20 million per episodes, and is it 8 episodes or 10? So you're dealing with a show that's upwards of $200 million to produce there as well. Um, it said here the expense was justified when it opened because it got a speedy second season renewal when it became one of those early batches of high-profile shows to be off the air for nearly 2 years between seasons. And season 1, when factoring in delayed multi-platform viewing, clocked in at an estimated 12 million viewers, with season 4 only getting 4 million. So that's it's not that 4 million is that little. It's just that that's a 75% drop off, which is that's a big deal. It says the new installment of Game of Thrones was 125 million. It says House of the Dragon earned about 29 million viewers per episode across all platforms over the course of its first seasons. Sources note that season 4 of Westworld, which again featured only 8 episodes, cost at least 160 million. So season 4 of Westworld was apparently more than House of the Dragon, which as I said, it was upwards of 20 million, 200 million. It says here 125 million. Okay. And maybe that's the problem, was that it changed settings. But it says here one of the issues was it was not a cheap show to produce or to market, and with the ratings diminishing in such a huge way, and HBO committed to other high-profile shows that are guaranteeing a return, it is an economical situation more than anything else. It says Joy and Nolan and even HBO had plotted a six-season journey for Westworld. Um, this may have contributed. It says during just ahead of its fourth season renewal, creators Joy and Nolan exited their deal with Westworld producers Warner Brothers Television for a nine-figure pact with Amazon. As part of the negotiations, they had a caveat or a carve out, that allowed them to remain showrunners in Westworld through a potential sixth season. That's a change from other top showrunners like Shonda Rhimes and Kenya Barris, who departed their shows after signing deals elsewhere. They also included an upfront payment for showrunning services on Westworld for what sources said covered up to a sixth season. So that definitely, I would say that, for my mind, that definitely probably contributed to why. Again, failing viewership is one thing. A lot of people can point to why. I don't have an issue with the storytelling, but I was committed to the full arc. I don't mind if a show starts off hard and heavy and then decides to go different routes and tell a story. I like stories. I'm an author by trade. So I like to see meandering paths. I don't have a problem with that. So for me, it was never about was the show as exciting as the first season. You also have to remember the first season had a cast including Anthony Hopkins, and that man alone draws a huge amount of viewership because it's Anthony fucking Hopkins, right? And not to say that Thandie Newton and all these other people aren't amazing actors in their own right, but there are a shifting scene of actors going from season one to season two, which definitely contributed to it to me. But also, it sounds to me like Joe and Nolan were also getting busy with other things with Netflix, and that may have contributed to HBO going, you know what, the ratings aren't as good. I wonder if, and this is pure theory at this point, you wonder if maybe had they decided to not sign that nine-figure deal with Netflix, if they would have stuck with, and HBO would have said, well, since you guys are only committed to us, we'll go ahead and give you those last two seasons. But with the showrunners saying, you know what, we're going to get a bigger paycheck over here. We're off to do this other thing. Why wouldn't they? But did I say Netflix? I meant Amazon. If I said Netflix in that, but it's an Amazon deal, not a Netflix deal. Um, since they signed with Amazon in early 2019, they have been busy. Their first show for the stream of the Peripheral launched on 21st and wrapped its first season, awaiting word on its future. They're also adapting the Fallout game, which I'm really excited for, into a Fallout series. It says that Westworld would not make its planned six seasons reflects the challenges of staying on top in peak TV era. Mm. Here's where it says this. During its run, Westworld collected more than 50 Emmy nominations, with seasons 1 and 2 earning more than 20 each. Season 3 only collected half that tally as ratings and reviews for its second season tumbled. And I remember um, that Thandie Newton got an Emmy for her, I believe it was Best Supporting Actress. Anyway, going back to this, this is what I was talking about. People who like to claim it's J.J. Abrams' fault. You don't know what you're talking about. When a show earns more than 50 Emmy nominations, it is not a bad show. It is a phenomenal show. It is a show that is breaking boundaries in all sorts of different ways. And if you look at the types of shows that Bad Robot has produced over the years, they have produced dozens of award-winning television shows. I'm not talking about the movies for a moment because I know a lot of people are like, he ruined Star Trek. No, you're just a whiny little bitch. It is what it is. All Star Trek is good Star Trek. Not all Star Trek is as good as other Star Trek, but all Star Trek is good Star Trek. If you're a true fan of Star Trek, and if you're a true fan of Star Wars, even though you might not like J.J. Abrams' films as much as you like other films, if you are a true fan, you will still enjoy those films, even if you critique them and nitpick them. Just like I, at the end of the day, even though I will nitpick the shit out of Rings of Power, I will still give that show credit for bringing more people to Tolkien and everything else. And I know a lot of people are going to immediately now go, downvote to video, boo, Renfield. But it is what it is. I call it like I see it. Bad Robot Productions and J.J. Abrams produce very good television. But budgets were a huge thing here. You have these actors who are getting, a couple $100,000 a piece. Had messy production process. Nolan and Joy had to catch up on scripts. Nolan fought for the production to get up and running again so that it didn't lose its California tax credit. But I mean, its first season were just absolutely amazing. Um, but ultimately, House of the Dragon has now picked up where Westworld was originally the golden boy for HBO's sort of premier prestige television. It's now become House of the Dragon. Um, it's one of those things where comparison to Game of Thrones are going to be there, but it says the fate of the network doesn't rise or fall on this show. That being said, it would be great if it connected with an audience, and ultimately it did for the first couple of um, seasons, but not ultimately beyond that. It said sources say that Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zlava's efforts to deliver 3.5 billion in cost savings from the recently merged conglomerate did not play a factor in their decision to cancel Westworld. So budget apparently wasn't the reason, but it still says it represents the latest example of the premium cables network's fiscal accountability. They recently passed on Abrams' original sci-fi drama Demimonde after he wanted a $200 million budget. Said HBO execs pushed back on the number, citing the scope of House of Dragons and its $125 million budget. There were other shows dropped that were budget related. So we'll see. It's really interesting to see shows like this get a potential good run and then get dropped for. And again, it's television. There are 100 reasons why it didn't get great reviews and everything else moving into season 4. But basically, season 1 and season 2 were good. Season 3 slowed it down a lot, and we suddenly went. For me, at least from a storytelling proponent component, seasons 1 and season 2 were focused on the worlds, the fantasy worlds that the robots lived in. And then season 3, suddenly they're in the real world. And I think that may have been a story switch that a lot of viewers weren't necessarily ready to accommodate. And I loved it because there was the uprising, the rebellion, and then season 4, without spoiling anything, season 4 picks up sometime after the robot rebellion and all this other stuff, and it's been a slow burn, but it's still a very interesting show to me, and I for one would have loved to see it play out its 6 season run, but alas, it's not going to be happening, at least at HBO. Whether or not it gets a renewal somewhere else, I don't know if Amazon would decide to pick it up like they did with The Expanse. We'll see. Food for thought. Love to hear your comments, thoughts below. If you want to support the channel and you've gotten to the end here, and hopefully you do, because ultimately I survive off of the goodwill of my viewers who support the channel with memberships and beyond. The easiest way, on a super thanks like this, if you just want to do a one-off thing, that button down there, just click it. It's a super thanks. You can do whatever you want. There's some pre-programmed amounts. You can also do memberships. There's 3 different tiers. Join the Adventurers Guild down there. There's also a Patreon page if you want to find out about my own writing and the fantasy world that I have built with my brother and my wife, and we've been working on for a couple of years. We've got some products out. There's tabletops, stuff. There's a book series. There's a point-and-click adventure game. It's all over at our Patreon page, so check that out as well. And hopefully I'll see everybody in the next episode of whatever it is that I do, because I do lots of stuff here on YouTube. So check it all out. Video games, reviews, shows, books, fantasy, science fiction, pop culture. Until next time, everybody, stay safe. Happy viewing.